Hi everyone, thank you for joining our video lecture. So today we'll be talking about the cardiovascular system. Before we get started, let's take this word apart and look at it in a little bit more detail. So cardio refers to the structure and the function of the heart specifically, and vascular refers to the vessels that carry the needed nutrients and oxygen and pick up the waste, refer to the vessels that do all those functions. So today we'll be focusing particularly on this first part, on cardio, so on the heart. We'll be talking about the structure of the heart, and we'll also be talking about the flow of blood through the heart. So why is the heart so important? The heart is the pump that supplies enough pressure for all those needed nutrients and oxygen and what we were just talking about to circulate through the body and to be able to go the places that they need to go to be able to do their function. So it is really, really important for our heart to be functioning properly. And we'll be going into a little bit more detail about that in a second. So this picture that you see in front of you right now on the PowerPoint is a bit intimidating for many at first. So I figured we would start with a bit easier way of explaining the anatomy of the heart, and there's no better way to start than with a picture of the heart. So this is where we're going to start, but we'll keep adding stuff to it. So one by one, we'll keep making this picture a bit more complicated, but just follow along and I'm sure you'll get the hang of it. So we'll start with the 4 chambers of the heart. We have the right atrium, the right ventricle, the left atrium, and the left ventricle. And what those are fluid-filled cavities through which blood can circulate. So to make this whole thing a bit more complicated, we will add some valves to the picture. So we still, as you can see, have our 4 chambers right here, the 4 main chambers of the heart, the atrium and the ventricles. And now we've added these yellow lines right here representing our valves. Now, why are valves important? Valves, as you know, are important for the passage, controlling the passage of things. May that be fluid or may that be air or whatever the medium is that flows through a valve, it's supposed to control the passage of it. So that is particularly important in the heart because we only want a one-way flow, as I noted down here on the right-hand side of your screen. It's really important of the heart to do that because we don't want oxygenated and deoxygenated blood to mix, which would happen if we were to allow to go backwards in the heart. So we want to avoid doing that. There needs to be a continuous flow throughout the heart that ensures that we don't mix oxygenated and deoxygenated blood so that we can ensure that the bad stuff's being dropped off where it's supposed to be dropped off and the good stuff, for example, the oxygen, is being picked up and allowed to circulate through the heart and eventually through the rest of the body. So that is really important. So let's look at those valves that we have drawn here. First one that we get to is the tricuspid valve, this one right here, going from the right atrium to the right ventricle. Then the next one we have is the pulmonary valve, going from the right ventricle to the lungs. Pulmonary is always referring to the lungs. Then the next one that we get to after we go to the lungs, we do our thing, get into a bit more detail on that in a minute. We go to the lungs, we get back to the heart, we get to the bicuspid valve. That one is oftentimes called the mitral valve also. So you might see it either way in your book. It might be called the bicuspid valve or the mitral valve. Again, we're going from the aorta to the ventricle. This time we're on the left-hand side of the heart. And eventually we're going from the ventricle to the aortic valve. Now all these valves, as we mentioned earlier, are ensuring one-way flow. The reason that I said that this right here is the right-hand side of the heart, and this right here is the left-hand side of the heart, although I know that your screen shows this as the left-hand side and this is the right-hand side. You have to imagine that there's a person standing in front of you, and that is the anterior view of their heart. So that is the front view of their heart. So somebody standing in front of you trying to shake your hand or something. If you were to be able to see their heart, you would see the anterior side of their heart. So that's what we're looking at. Therefore, the right-hand side of the heart is the left-hand side of our screen. The left-hand side of the heart is the right-hand side of the screen. So a couple other things I'd like to mention about the valves is that the pulmonary valve and the aortic valve together are called the semilunar valves. And the semilunar valves are responsible for taking blood from the heart to outside of the heart. So either to the body or to the lungs. And then we have the tricuspid valve and the bicuspid valve, and they have a bit easier of a name. They're called the atrioventricular valves, and you guessed it, that is because they're going from the atrium to the ventricles. Now, when I was studying this, I had a bit of a hard time trying to figure out if the tricuspid valve comes first or the bicuspid valve comes first. They sound so similar that they always got me confused. There's two words that you have to remember. It's RAT and LAP. RAT stands for right atrium tricuspid, and LAP stands for left atrium bicuspid. So if that helps you, that's good. If you have another trick to remember these, then please go for it. Okay, now if you listen to your heartbeat, you hear this lub-dub sound. And what that is, it has to do with your valves in your heart. So we're gonna go to a little animation here that I find pretty cool. So you can see your atrioventricular valves are closing at the same time. That is the LAP sound that you hear. The DAP sound is created by the closure of your semilunar valves. Now we're going to go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so what have we done to our heart so far? We've added 4 chambers and we've added valves. Now, there's one important question. How do we get blood to and from the heart? And the answer to that is given away on the bottom of the PowerPoint. It's the great vessels. Now, the great vessels, those are the large vessels that carry blood to the body, to the heart or away from the heart. And we have 2 kinds of those. There's great vessels that carry deoxygenated blood, and then there's vessels that carry oxygenated blood. So we'll be going through those one by one. We're going to be starting with the ones that carry deoxygenated blood. So what does deoxygenated mean? That means it's blood that does not have any oxygen left in it, which is bad because if that were to keep circulating, then cells wouldn't get the necessary oxygen that they need because there's none left, and then they couldn't do their function. We need to drop off the deoxygenated blood, and the great vessels are the ones that carry the deoxygenated blood towards the heart and away from the heart. So the ones that carry the blood towards the heart are the superior and inferior vena cava. So we have 2 parts of this, coming from the top and coming from the bottom, superior and inferior, and going to the heart. We're going to the right atrium, through our tricuspid valve to our right ventricle, to our pulmonary valve. And pulmonary, remember we said lung. So after that, we're going to our pulmonary vessel. Now, the other kind that we have, other kind of great vessel, is the vessels that carry oxygenated blood. And those vessels, there are 2 of them also. Those are the pulmonary vein and the aorta. Let's start with the pulmonary vein. That's that one right here. So we had the pulmonary artery, or the pulmonary vessel, that carried blood towards the lung. It does its thing. It does its exchange. That's for a different lecture. It does its thing. And then we're going back from the lung to the heart by way of the pulmonary vein. We're going to the, remember this is the left-hand side, although it's the right-hand side on your screen. We're going to the left atrium, through the bicuspid valve or mitral valve, to the left ventricle, to the aortic valve, and as the name implies, from the aortic valve, we're probably going to be going to the aorta, which is exactly what we're doing. So from the aortic valve to the aorta is very important because that is the one that carries all that good oxygenated blood to the body, and then in the body it circulates, all the cells do their thing, whatever that may be. They all have different functions. And once all the good stuff is used up, we're getting the deoxygenated blood that goes to the superior and inferior vena cava, and eventually we end up back in the heart and the circulation starts again. Whoops, now I moved my little picture. There we go. So let's go through this flow of blood one more time. We're starting with the superior and inferior vena cava, going to the right atrium, tricuspid valve, right ventricle, pulmonary valve, pulmonary artery, to the lungs, pulmonary veins, over here, right, number 8. Now there's one note I would like to make. So the arteries carry blood away from the heart. The veins carry blood towards the heart. Usually the arteries carry oxygenated blood, which is not the case right here. In this case, we're carrying deoxygenated blood towards the lungs. The veins usually carry deoxygenated blood. In this case, the veins are carrying the freshly oxygenated blood from the lungs. So then we have, where were we? So the pulmonary vein right here, we're going to the left atrium, bicuspid or mitral valve, left ventricle, aortic valve, aorta, to the body, and as we said, we'll circle right back around after we use up all the good stuff. Now here's one, if you would like to practice this and see if you can replicate what we just went through. That's a good picture to start practicing right here. And that is all for today. Thank you so much for listening. Good luck studying.